Mr. President, today President Obama told countries of the world that the United States is ready to lead on climate change, but while he's reassuring world leaders, he has a lot of work to do with us in the United States Senate. Only yesterday in the Wall Street Journal, John Bruton, the European ambassador to the United States, chided this Senate, saying, "Is the U.S. Senate really expecting all the other countries to make a serious effort on climate change at the Copenhagen conference in the absence of a clear commitment from the United States? Asking an international conference to sit around looking out the window for months while one chamber of the legislature of one country deals with its other business is simply not a realistic political position." Now, I understand the ambassador's frustration, but I hope he understands that the Senate has work to do other than deal with climate change and energy. Reforming health care involving 1/6 of the nation's economy is not something the Senate's going to do in a hurry. But on the matter of climate change, however, he's asking a legitimate question. An even better question might be this: how can the United States lecture other countries about climate change when we won't take advantage of the one technology that shows the most promise in dealing with it? I'm talking, of course, about nuclear power, which produces 19% of all our electricity, but 70% of our carbon-free electricity. Coal-fired power plants produce 36% of the carbon dioxide, the principal greenhouse gas that most scientists believe contributes to global warming. Of the top 5 countries that produce carbon, indeed that produce most of the carbon in the world, 4, China, Russia, India, and Japan, are committed to a bold program of expansion of nuclear power. Only the United States is not. We are the country that invented nuclear power, and we haven't started a new nuclear plant in 30 years. Even though the 104 reactors we built during the 1970s produced 19% of all of our electricity, and as I said, 70% of our carbon-free electricity. So if climate change, Mr. President, is the inconvenient problem, as my fellow Tennessean Al Gore says, the other large carbon-emitting nations are posing a legitimate and truly inconvenient question. If we, they may say, are building dozens of carbon-free nuclear power plants in an effort to deal with climate change, why are you in the United States lecturing us when you haven't started a new plant in 30 years and your president and everyone in his administration seems to become tongue-tied or get a stomachache whenever someone mentions the idea of nuclear power? Everyone, that is, except the one member of the administration who knows the most about nuclear power. Dr. Stephen Chu, the Nobel Prize-winning scientist who heads the Energy Department. We've heard many say that the Bush administration did a poor job of listening to scientists. Well then, perhaps it's fair for me to suggest that the Obama administration, including the president, might do more listening to their chief scientist, Dr. Chu. In testimony before Congress, Dr. Chu has flatly said nuclear power plants are safe. He has said that the used nuclear fuel from those plants, the nuclear waste, can be safely stored on site for 40 to 60 years, while scientists engage in a sort of mini Manhattan project like the one we had in World War II to find the best way to recycle used nuclear fuel. Most likely, that will mean that the mass waste is reduced by 97% and that will only be radioactive for 300 years instead of 1 million, or that it will be continuously used over and over again so there's none of the plutonium that might be used for bombs. In an interview on National Public Radio the other day, Dr. Chu said he would rather live down the river from a nuclear plant than other forms of producing energy. Quote, "There's less pollution we know about that's very dangerous," he said. "The nuclear power plant's record in the United States is really very, very good." That's the Obama administration's chief scientist. Our whole fleet of 104 reactors is up and running 90% of the time, which shows we know how to operate nuclear power plants better and more safely than any other country. Even France doesn't run its reactors as well, and they've got plenty of experience. They get 80% of their electricity from nuclear power. But if we've learned to run them, we still can't bring ourselves to build any. We've been stuck on about 100 reactors for 20 years now. We built those between 1970 and 1990 at a time when we hadn't ever before built any, and we got that all under our belt, and we can't seem to get started on the new generation. But while we've not been able to start a plant in 30 years, the rest of the world is taking the technology we invented and using it to create cheap, reliable, carbon-free electricity from nuclear power plants. There are 44 reactors under construction this minute, most of them in Asia. Asia, yes, without most Americans realizing it, the center of gravity of nuclear innovation has moved to the Far East. China has 4 reactors under construction and has announced plans for 130 more. Russia intends to build 2 reactors a year in order to replace the 30% of their electricity they get from natural gas so they can sell the gas to Europe at 6 times the price they get at home. Japan already gets 36% of its electricity from nuclear, almost twice what we get, and it's building 2 more reactors. South Korea gets nearly 40% of its electricity from nuclear and is planning 8 more reactors by 2015. They've even got their own design now. A 1,400 megawatt next generation reactor that evolved out of something they borrowed from us. India is developing thorium reactors instead of uranium and has a design for a mini reactor that they're going to market to developed countries. Just look at the list of top 10 carbon-emitting countries as listed in yesterday's Wall Street Journal. I've already mentioned that of the top 5, China, the U.S., Russia, India, and Japan, we're the only one that doesn't have an active nuclear construction program. Of the next 4, Germany, Canada, the UK, and South Korea, only Germany claims they don't want nuclear, but they're buying significant amounts of nuclear electricity from France. Then there's the number 10 carbon emitter, Iran. Now there's an interesting case. A few months ago, the president said it was okay for Iran to develop a civilian nuclear power program. He didn't have a problem with that. But if it's all right for Iran to have a nuclear power program, why can't we do the same over here? Leading on climate change doesn't require passing a complicated cap-and-trade regime with renewable energy mandates that will impose a huge new tax on energy, stifle economic growth, and leave us with intermittent and unreliable alternative energy sources such as wind and solar. That's the wrong direction. It's time to lead by example and not just by words. It's time to embrace the one technology that truly has the possibility of powering a prosperous planet without ruining the environment or covering our treasured landscapes with energy sprawl. It's time to build 100 new nuclear plants in the next 20 years. And the bonus is we'll get plenty of so-called green jobs. Twice as many out of it as we would building 186,000 wind turbines, which is the number it would take to create electricity equal to the amount of 100 new nuclear plants. Building 100 new reactors is going to mean rebuilding a forgotten American infrastructure. We're going to have to build steel forges that can turn out these 600-ton reactor vessels, which is something we can't do in this country right now. The Japanese and the Chinese and the Russians are all working on it. Thank you. We aren't. We're going to need scientists. We're going to need construction workers. We're going to need a whole new generation of nuclear engineers and technicians to replace the last generation that's getting ready to retire. I wonder, Mr. President, if I might have 1 extra minute to finish my remarks?
1 minute and 19
I thank the senator
seconds.
for his courtesy. But the prize we're going to get for it is stable, reliable, low cost, as well as carbon-free electricity that will once again allow us to manufacture things in this country again instead of shipping all those jobs overseas looking for cheap energy. We can put America back to work building a whole new infrastructure based on the greatest scientific discovery of the 20th century. Then when our president visits the United Nations or Copenhagen, he might be able to lead on climate change, and he might not receive so many lectures from other countries who are busy building nuclear power plants, because they understand that if climate change is the inconvenient problem, then nuclear power is the inconvenient but best and most environmentally beneficial solution. I thank the President and I thank the Senator from Illinois for his courtesy. I yield the floor.